let's have a look at that backlight in process. Let's come up here. Can we dim? Doesn't have to be you, Kieran, actually. Are you all right just dimming that quickly? I'm just going to roughly put this back because we're kind of not too fussed with this now. Sorry to those of you that's blocking the view. Let me try and get up higher. Can everyone see the TV? More or less. You can see, although we've got that kind of depth with this image and we've got Gavin placed so that he's looking towards the light. So like I said, we're lighting the sort of short side of the face, getting that depth. You can see how he doesn't really stand out too much. It does actually help, rather unhelpfully for me, but does help that Gavin's wearing a light coloured top and pretty much everyone else in the scene behind him is wearing a dark coloured top. Actually, that obviously has nothing to do with lighting, but it shows how important your art direction is as well. And using your art department as a means of making subjects stand out as well. This is not all on the DOP. This is not all about light. And in fact, that's really helping Gavin stand out. Let's pretend for a minute that Gavin's got a darker top on. He really would disappear. I don't know if that would be any darker, but maybe. Oh, I see you've got a black top on. I thought you were alluding to your skin. I glossed over it. I thought this has gone a bit fruity. Right, let's come back here. So I've got just a very small little, this is a Nanlite Forza 60B2, tiny little Cobb style LED, which is just mounted up here. Because it's small, it's really easy to kind of get out of the way. You can get magnetic mounts for these, you can plonk them on anything. It's just on a simple little Mathellini clamp at the moment. But in terms of helping our subject do two things. One, tell the story of the form of the subject. So reveal the form of the subject to the lens, but also in terms of cutting them out from their background and aiding the shallower depth of field that we've got. Then this backlight does an awful lot to just pop that out. It really takes very little. Okay, I think that's probably on about 2% there, but it's just enough to cut out Gavin's areas which were too dark that they would just be disappearing into the background. It just cuts them out. So a good backlight will be almost directly behind and up, not up so high. If Gavin was further back, you would start to be in danger of it starting to creep forwards, which is a particular issue with people like myself and Gavin, who are follically challenged, because you end up with a very bright reflective spot on the top of the head. But even if we both had full heads of hair, there would be a point where it would start to come onto the front of the forehead or even clip the nose, and you really don't want that. So being back behind, doesn't have to be this far behind, but it's just sort of behind and up, out the way. It's really difficult to screw up a backlight. If it was too off to one side, it starts to move into more of a kicker, like a 3/4 kicker from behind, and then it starts to spill across the face, which sometimes you want, sometimes you don't want. Depends what you're trying to do. In a minute, I'll go back to that reference with Leon, and I'll explain why I've gone with a kicker for that rather than a straightforward backlight. But in this particular case, you can see how that just cuts out Gavin across the top of the hair as well. And it starts to just kind of bring him to the foreground. If this is a narrative, it's all about Gavin. We don't want any distractions or too many distractions at all. We can start to introduce a little bit of light into the sort of ambience into the rest of the space if we want to. So, I'm just using this light, which is, I don't have quite free reign over, but I can start to introduce a bit of ambient light to raise the level of the room. If it's important, I start to see features and people in the rest of the room, because obviously it's very dynamic otherwise. So we've got that ability with this light as well. I would want this further back though, because obviously at the moment where it is, it's spilling too much or hitting directly Gavin in the face. Another thing that I might want to do is I might want to just flag off certain parts. So for example, there's quite a lot of light falling on, sorry, what was your name again?
Clarissa.
So Clarissa is just catching within the light. So we can start to reduce the amount of light that's falling onto areas that we're not interested in, just using some simple flags, okay, just to pull that away. Likewise, if it wasn't all about Gavin and we're about to rack focus and it's more about the group, we don't need to worry too much about flagging off Clarissa, but we might want to flag off some of this backlight potentially, because we're getting a little bit of that backlight just falling on other people. So for example, we can just take that off Clarissa. Obviously I'm in the shot at the moment, so we would clamp this up out of the shot, but you can just see how we can just pull that off. So having some flags around just to pop in places, because, you know, these lights, we're often in situations where they end up not quite where we want them, or it would take far too much effort to modify them to the point where they're just popping out on one single person. Having said that, I will show you later a little technique for doing exactly that and lighting a very specific and small area. But hopefully you can see how, with the shape of the key and the backlight, we're making the most of that depth. We're really isolating and creating layers, creating three-dimensionality.